Have you ever felt your entire nervous system hijacked by a single person? Not because they're objectively special, but because something about them detonates a reaction you can't explain? You call it chemistry, you call it attraction, but it's neither of those things. Your sexual desire is not accidental. It is a transmission from the unconscious, speaking in the only language it knows, symbols, energy, and urgency. And if you learn to listen to what it's actually saying, it stops being a distraction and becomes a map, not to the person you want, but to the person you're supposed to become. Most people treat desire like a problem to solve or a craving to satisfy. They either suppress it until it mutates, or chase it until they're exhausted and still empty. Both responses miss the point, because desire is not asking you for action, it's asking you for attention. It's trying to show you the parts of yourself you've buried, the qualities you've disowned, the potentials you've never allowed yourself to embody. Carl Gustav Jung understood this. He didn't pathologize desire, he studied it. He saw that every attraction carries information about your shadow, your complexes, your unlived life. He discovered that the heat you feel toward another person is generated by the friction between who you are and who you're trying to become. This isn't theory, this is method. You'll learn how to read desire like a diagnostic instrument, how to distinguish projection from truth, how to metabolize erotic energy into creative power, how to stop being controlled by attraction and start being informed by it. Let's begin where Jung always began, with the uncomfortable truth that changes everything. Your desire knows you better than you know yourself, and it's been trying to tell you something all along. Desire does not speak in sentences, it speaks in sensations, images, and sudden certainties that bypass your rational mind. This is the system working exactly as designed. Your unconscious communicates through symbols, and sexual desire is one of its most concentrated forms of symbolic speech. When you feel drawn to someone, your psyche is recognizing a pattern, an archetype, a quality that corresponds to something buried inside you. The person becomes a carrier. They hold temporarily, externally, the very thing you need to integrate internally. Jung called this projection, not as a mistake, but as a natural mechanism through which the unconscious shows you what you cannot yet see in yourself. You desire strength. You'll be magnetized by someone who embodies it. You desire freedom. You'll ache for the person who seems untethered. You desire depth. You'll chase the one who feels like a riddle. But the quality you're chasing is already inside you. It's just been exiled, suppressed, or never given permission to exist. The person you want is not the source. They're the mirror reflecting what's been locked away. Inside you live two figures, Jung called the anima and animus, the inner feminine and inner masculine. These aren't social constructs, they're psychic realities, living images of wholeness. When these figures remain unconscious, you project them outward, you cast them onto someone, and then spend your life chasing that person, convinced they hold the key to your completion. This is the trap. You feel overwhelming attraction and assume it's about them. But what's actually happening is they've activated your inner figure. They resemble in energy, in essence, the image you carry unconsciously of what wholeness looks like. And because that image has never been integrated, you believe the only way to access it is through possession of the other person. The work is reowning the projection. When desire strikes, pause, ask, what quality does this person embody that I find irresistible? Name it specifically. Courage, presence, wildness, tenderness, sovereignty. Now ask, where in my life am I starving for this quality? Not where do I see it in others, but where am I refusing to embody it myself? If you're drawn to someone's freedom, where are you living in self-imposed prison? If you're drawn to intensity, where have you dimmed yourself to stay acceptable? The moment you begin to reown the projection, the compulsive quality shifts. You're no longer desperate. You're no longer trying to consume the other person to fill a void. You become magnetic in a different way, not because you need something from them, but because you're no longer asking them to carry what belongs to you. The shadow is not evil, it's everything you've refused to be. Every quality you were told was wrong, every impulse you learned to suppress, every part of yourself you amputated to gain approval. It includes your darkness, yes, but also your power, your wildness, your hunger, your truth. And sexual desire is the doorway the shadow uses to announce itself. When you feel an attraction that disturbs you, that feels inappropriate or irrational or too intense, your shadow is knocking. Ask yourself, What about this attraction makes me uncomfortable? Not the logistics, but the internal reaction. What does this desire reveal about me that I've been pretending isn't true? If you see yourself as perpetually composed, desire will provoke your chaos. If you see yourself as endlessly giving, desire will demand you name your needs. If you see yourself as rational, desire will drag you into mystery. The friction is the invitation. What you find unbearable in your attraction, its intensity, its timing, its rawness, maps directly onto the parts of you that need integration. This is why desire becomes compulsive when it's rooted in the shadow. You're not just wanting the person, you're trying to retrieve yourself through them. But you cannot integrate your shadow through another person. You can only do it by turning toward yourself. Jung also spoke about complexes, knots of emotion, memory, and defense that cluster around a wound. When a complex is triggered, it hijacks your entire system. In desire, this shows up as patterns you can't break. You keep choosing the same type of person in different bodies. You keep playing out the same dynamic with different names. The complex is running the show. Some common ones: the abandonment complex, which makes you cling to unavailability because familiar pain feels safer than unknown love. The unworthiness complex, which convinces you that you must earn affection through performance. The rescue complex, which makes you attracted only to brokenness because fixing others lets you avoid facing yourself. These aren't moral judgments, they're psychological patterns. And the moment you can say, a complex is speaking, you create space. In that space you can ask, what is this pattern protecting me from feeling? What old pain is it trying to prevent? When you work with the shadow and the complex simultaneously, desire begins to purify. The compulsion loosens, the desperation fades. You stop being controlled by attraction and start being informed by it. You can feel the pull without being possessed by it. And when the shadow speaks, it doesn't say, I want that person. It says, I want to stop pretending I'm not powerful. I want to stop hiding my need. I want to stop performing safety when I'm dying for aliveness. I want to become whole. Transformation does not happen by choosing one side and annihilating the other. It happens in the space between opposites, in the tension that refuses to resolve prematurely. Jung called this the tension of opposites, and he said it was the furnace in which the psyche is remade. On one side of desire lives instinct, raw, urgent, immediate. On the other side lives awareness, discernment, responsibility, truth. Most people collapse into one pole or the other. They either chase every desire until they're hollow, or they repress every impulse until they become brittle. Both paths are violence against the soul. What Jung discovered, the transcendent function, is that when you consent to hold the tension without collapsing, something new emerges. A third thing, not instinct and not repression, but a synthesis that contains both and transcends both. This is psychic alchemy, and desire provides the heat that makes it possible. Here's the practice. When desire strikes with intensity, don't immediately act or immediately shut down. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Sit with the sensation exactly as it is. Feel the heat in your chest, the tightness in your throat. Notice the thoughts that try to bargain. Just this once won't hurt. This feeling means I have to act. Don't obey either voice. Breathe into the center of the tension. Ask, what does my instinct want right now? Let it speak. It might say contact, release, possession, validation, intensity. Now ask, what does my awareness know to be true? It might say, this isn't aligned with my values. This person isn't available. This is a familiar pattern ending in pain. This desire is symbolic, not literal. Hold both truths simultaneously. Don't pick a side, stay in the crucible, and then wait. Often within minutes, the psyche offers a third option. Not the option your instinct demanded or your fear rejected, but something wiser. A conversation you need to have with yourself. A boundary you need to set. A quality you need to embody. A creative act that channels the same energy. This is sublimation, not repression, but intelligent redirection. Sexual energy is life force. It can move through many channels. Write with that energy, move your body with that intensity. Speak a difficult truth, create something that didn't exist before. The same current that wanted to chase an illusion becomes the fire that forges your life. The more you practice holding the tension, the stronger your container becomes. You develop the capacity to feel deeply without being controlled, to want fully without being desperate, to choose consciously without being rigid. The tension is not the enemy, the tension is the teacher. Desire speaks in different registers, and each one carries specific information. Your job is to learn the language. First signal, intensity. When an attraction arrives like lightning, sudden, blinding, all-consuming, an archetype has constellated. You're caught in a mythic pattern. Ask what story is being activated: the savior and the wounded, the king and the devotee, the hunter and the elusive, the rebel and the law. Don't judge the myth, name it. The moment you recognize the pattern, it loses some of its power to swallow you whole. Second signal, repetition. If you keep wanting the same dynamic in different bodies, a complex is hunting for resolution. You chase unavailable people over and over. You desire intensity and run from stability over and over. This is the unconscious trying to heal an old wound by recreating the conditions that caused it. When you notice the repetition, thank the pattern for revealing itself. Then ask, what does this pattern promise me? What wound is it trying to heal, and what would it look like to give myself what I've been asking strangers to provide? Third signal, paradox. If you're simultaneously drawn towards someone and repelled by them, you're standing at a threshold. Something in you knows that crossing this line will cost you an old identity. Don't obey the fear, but don't ignore it either. Ask, what are you protecting me from? What do you believe will happen if I let myself want this? The paradox is the signal that you're ready for the next level of yourself. Fourth signal, timing. Desire that arrives at the wrong time is often the most honest. It shows up when you've just committed to something else, when you're supposed to be focused. This is your psyche saying, what you've built is too small for who you're becoming. Pay attention to what you were doing right before the desire struck. Were you performing safety, people-pleasing, living from duty instead of truth? Desire that interrupts is trying to interrupt a pattern of self-betrayal. Fifth signal, body location. Not all desire feels the same. Some lands as warmth in the chest. This is desire for connection, intimacy. Some lands as fire in the belly. This is desire for power, agency. Some lands as electricity in the spine. This is desire for transformation, for becoming. Some lands as heaviness in the throat. This is desire trying to speak a truth you've been silencing. The location tells you what the desire is actually about. Learn to read your desire like weather patterns, not as chaos but as information, because every signal is the unconscious trying to guide you home. Your dreams are the unconscious speaking without interference. Sexual symbols in dreams are rarely about sex. They're about union, creation, transformation. Pay attention to the emotional tone: joy, guilt, urgency, shame. Notice the setting: a threshold, a wild place, a sacred space, a decaying room. Notice the obstacle: a locked door, a missing item, an unwanted witness. These details diagnose what part of your psyche is seeking integration and what part is resisting. Write the dream down before you move. Title it like a short story. Then ask, what in my waking life carries the same feeling? What decision, conversation, or creative act would honor what this dream is asking for? When you align one small action with the dream's symbolic direction, you tell the unconscious you're listening. Now, the body. All of this psychological work lives in your nervous system. If your baseline is dysregulated, chronically braced, collapsed, or scattered, desire will either feel like an emergency or sedation. Neither reading is accurate. When desire spikes, practice the sequence. Exhale longer than you inhale 5 times. Feel the backs of your legs and the weight of your feet. Press your tongue lightly to the roof of your mouth. Widen your peripheral vision. Name 5 anchor points in the room. This takes less than 60 seconds and shifts you from possessed to present. Boundaries are not the opposite of desire. They're its container. Without boundaries, desire becomes noise. With them, it becomes music. Ask 3 boundary questions whenever attraction arises. What do I want to protect? Your time, your integrity, your core commitments, your peace. These aren't selfish, they're the foundation of your life. What do I want to cultivate? Conversation that moves toward truth, not performance. Connection that reveals depth. Presence that builds intimacy, not intensity that burns out. What do I want to refuse? Arrangements that require you to lie. Dynamics that demand you diminish yourself. Interactions that leave you hollow after the high fades. When you articulate these boundaries clearly, the energy that was leaking into fantasy and obsession returns as focus and direction. You're no longer bleeding attention into something that can't hold it. Every time desire arises, it moves through 3 layers. Most people only experience the first and mistake it for the whole truth. Layer 1. Sensation. The immediate physical experience. Where exactly is the feeling? Your chest, belly, throat, spine. What's the quality? Heat or cold? Pressure or expansion? Tightness or openness? What's the rhythm? Fast and urgent or slow and deep? Spend 60 seconds tracking the sensation with precision. No interpretation, just observation. Layer 2. Story. The narrative your mind instantly overlays. If this happens, I'll finally be chosen. If I don't act now, I'll miss my chance forever. This person is the one. This feeling means I have to leave everything. These stories feel true. They feel urgent, but they're interpretations generated by your history, your complexes, your fears. Write the story down. See it as construction, not truth. Layer 3. Symbol. If you can neither obey the sensation nor believe the story, if you hold both without collapsing, a symbol emerges. An image, a word, a knowing. It might be a door you haven't opened, a memory of choosing safety over truth, a word like power or freedom or voice. This symbol is the real message. Once you receive it, the compulsive quality often loosens. Morning practice. Before your phone, ask 2 questions. What am I secretly chasing today? Validation, control, escape, proof of worth. What quality do I choose to embody instead? If you wrote validation, choose truth. If you wrote control, choose trust. Circle the quality and design one act that proves it before noon. Evening practice. Write down the 3 strongest pulls you felt today toward a person, image, memory, or scenario. For each, write the quality you were actually seeking. Safety, freedom, intensity, intimacy, recognition. Then write one way you could feed that need tomorrow without outsourcing it. Weekly practice. Take 20 minutes for a fantasy interview. Pick the fantasy with the most charge. Ask it, what role do I take? Pursuer, pursued, rescuer, ruler, seen, unseen? What emotion saturates it? Adoration, danger, power, relief. What setting repeats? Hidden rooms, public displays, thresholds, confessions? Translate each element into a human need. The hidden room becomes, I need to stop hiding my desires. The public display becomes, I need to stop shrinking. When you meet the need consciously, the fantasy begins to shift. These aren't spiritual exercises, they're psychological hygiene. You're learning to read desire fluently, and the more fluent you become, the less you're controlled by unconscious patterns. Values are not rules, they're the shape your soul takes in action. When desire and values cooperate, you feel clean, energized, clear. When they're at war, you feel split, high for a moment, hollow afterward. Create a 2-column inventory. On the left, list signals of aligned desire, grounded excitement, widening attention, ease in the breath, increased curiosity, a sense that time deepens rather than vanishes. On the right, list signals of misaligned desire, tunnel vision, bargaining thoughts, shame before action, the urge to hide, the need for reassurance rather than truth. Keep this visible. When attraction spikes, match the feeling against the list. Let your body's honesty guide you before your mind starts negotiating. This isn't about being good, it's about being whole. Creativity is not separate from eros. It's eros with a longer attention span. If your romantic life feels monotonous or frantic, look at your creative life. Are you giving form to the images that visit you? Are you finishing what you start? Are you risking your voice? Desire starved of creation will try to solve everything through relationship. It will make you desperate for someone to complete you because you're not completing anything yourself. But desire fed by creation becomes generous inside relationship. You're not asking the other person to be your purpose. You're bringing your already generative self to the encounter. You don't have to be an artist. You need a practice that asks you to bring something invisible into visibility every day. An idea into words, an intention into structure, a vision into a plan, a promise into a boundary, a truth into a conversation. Every time you do this, you're making the same move desire is always asking you to make, become what you seek. When you externalize your inner world through creative action, the pressure on your romantic desires lessens. You're no longer obsessed with being seen because you're learning to see yourself through what you make. The energy that was leaking into fantasy returns as focus, as discipline, as the satisfaction of bringing something real into the world. Most people use erotic energy either to dominate or to disappear. Dominance without tenderness is brittle, power that fears vulnerability. Tenderness without power is exhausting, softness that fears its own strength. Your desire reveals where you tilt. If you habitually rush to impress, perform, or conquer, you're leading with power and exiling tenderness. The practice is softening, slower speech, longer pauses, letting silence work, asking instead of stating, allowing yourself to not know, to not control. This will feel like death to the part of you that believes power means invulnerability. But you're not losing power, you're adding depth to it. If you habitually appease, adapt, or overgive, you're leading with tenderness and exiling power. The practice is strengthening, speaking a boundary cleanly without apology, naming a desire without performing uncertainty, saying no and allowing it to land, tolerating another's disappointment without rescuing them. This will feel like violence to the part of you that believes love means self-erasure, but you're not losing tenderness, you're giving it a spine. When power and tenderness learn to share the same body, desire becomes trustworthy. Others sense you're not using energy to extract or perform. You're offering energy as presence. This is what makes you magnetic, not perfection but wholeness. There's a reason spirituality and sexuality belong in the same conversation. Both concern union, but union is not the erasure of difference. It's the meeting of differences in a field of awareness that can hold them both. Sexual desire, when approached with reverence, trains you to stay awake at exactly this edge where instinct meets insight, where matter meets meaning. Most people can't tolerate this edge. They either spiritualize sex until it loses its rawness, or reduce it to mechanics until it loses its soul. Both moves are fear, but staying present, actually feeling what you're feeling, actually seeing who you're with, actually allowing yourself to be seen, this is where transformation happens. Not in the transcendence of desire, but in the full embodiment of it. When you bring awareness into the places you've been running on autopilot, the sexual becomes sacred. You're no longer using another body to escape your own. You're meeting another soul through the doorway of flesh, and if you can remain awake when instinct is surging, when vulnerability is raw, you're developing capacity for a different kind of life, not one where you're constantly seeking peaks to feel alive, one where you're cultivating constant depth. Depth is quieter than intensity. It's the kind of joy you don't need to photograph to prove you felt it. So now you've seen the signs, you recognize them, you've been living them. The resistance, the repetition, the exhaustion, the hollowness, the chaos, the pain, the synchronicities, they're all there, painting a picture you can no longer pretend not to see. The question becomes, what now? Because recognition without action is just another form of suffering. It's one thing to sleepwalk through your life, unaware that anything is wrong. It's quite another to be fully awake, seeing exactly how you're betraying yourself, and doing nothing about it. That's a special kind of torture. Most people, when they finally see the signs, when they finally understand what's being asked of them, do absolutely nothing. They nod, they agree, they say yes, that's exactly what's happening to me. And then they go right back to their old patterns, their old compromises, their comfortable misery. Because at least it's familiar. At least they know how to navigate it. The response required is not dramatic. It's not about burning your life down, quitting your job tomorrow, ending your marriage tonight, or selling everything and moving to a monastery. Those might be the right moves for some people in some situations, but external changes without internal understanding usually just create new problems with the same shape. The response required is this: stop, be quiet, listen, not listen with your thinking mind, which will immediately start strategizing and planning and trying to figure out how to fix everything. Listen with your whole being, create actual space, turn off the noise, put down the phone, stop consuming information, stop seeking distraction, just sit with yourself in silence. And in that silence, without judgment, without trying to fix anything, ask yourself, what am I being told? What am I refusing to see? What am I clinging to that needs to be released? The answer won't come as words. It won't arrive as a clear plan with 5 steps and a timeline. It will come as a feeling, as a knowing, as a recognition that settles in your chest and makes something that was tight suddenly loosen. Your body will relax slightly. You'll take a deeper breath. This is the sign that you've touched truth. Alan Watts was fond of saying that the moment you genuinely see something, it changes, not because you've done anything about it, but because the seeing itself is transformative. When you actually recognize a pattern rather than just thinking about it, when you feel the truth of your situation in your bones rather than just understanding it intellectually, something shifts at a fundamental level. But then comes the hard part. Once you've heard the message, once you know what needs to happen, you have to act on it. You have to make the change, even when it's uncomfortable, even when people don't understand, even when you're not certain how it will all work out, even when every rational part of your mind is screaming that you're making a mistake. This is where most people get stuck. They receive the message, they understand perfectly what needs to happen, and then they negotiate with reality. They say yes but not yet, or yes but I need to wait until, or yes but what about? And so the signs must get louder. The whispers become shouts, the nudges become shoves, the pain intensifies, the chaos increases, because the universe is patient, but it won't be ignored forever. Here's what you need to understand. The universe is not separate from you. You are not a tiny isolated consciousness navigating a hostile cosmos. You are the universe experiencing itself in human form. When the universe warns you, it's you warning yourself. Your deeper wisdom, your connection to something larger than your small ego self, is trying to break through to your conscious awareness. These signs are not coming from outside, they're bubbling up from inside. From that place in you that knows, that's always known, what's true and what's false, what serves life and what diminishes it. The question is not whether the signs are real. The question is whether you're willing to trust them, whether you're willing to trust yourself. Are you willing to follow where life wants to take you, even when it contradicts everything your thinking mind insists is true? Are you willing to let go of what you thought you wanted in order to discover what you actually need? Are you willing to trust the process even when you can't see where it's leading? Because that's what the universe is asking. Not blind faith in some external power, but trust in your own deepest knowing. Trust that the discomfort, the signs, the strange patterns, they're all pointing towards something real, toward a life that's actually yours, rather than a life you're performing for an audience that doesn't even care. So now you see what your desire was trying to tell you all along. But there's something Jung discovered about what happens when you finally understand yourself and no one around you is there to witness it. When you're ready to become whole but you're standing completely alone, that changes everything. Watch this next.